So I would like us to welcome Joyce so that she welcomes our speaker. I will not try to pronounce her name. South African. The profile is in your document. Lindiwe Jabavu. I certainly will not try the second one. So Joyce, are you ready?
It's my real pleasure to introduce we call her Lindy. I met her not so long ago, but I was just so taken by her credentials are there in the biography. I could go on and on. But she brings in she's an executive coach who also works with, who works with systems coaching, which is a slightly different way of thinking about what we are doing. And what she's going to be talking about now is actually to complement. I have talked about the organization, I've talked about individuals, I've talked about all these kinds of things. But the reason why we do what we do is because of what we call the stakeholders, the communities and others. And so I was completely taken by the way what she does here and how she does it. And so I thought she would really we would benefit from having her. So I will not say much more. Lindy, it's a great pleasure. I'm so happy to see you. And here we have over 30 people from across East Africa, eagerly waiting to hear from you. And she works with a team that is called Change Makers. So you can just tell everything is rhyming. She's part of collective, whether she is planning to or not. So welcome, my dear, and we look forward to hearing what you have got to say now. So I will let you start right away without spending more time. Lindy, it is your turn.
Thank you so much. There's so much fun in that room. I feel cheated, actually. I should have been there physically rather than connecting online. So I think next time, please just invite me to join physically. So you've got my profile, but maybe what I just want to emphasize, I'm grateful and I feel very humbled to be part of this 2-day session, but I'll just be joining for the 1 day. I spent about 7 years in Tanzania, so I must declare that conflict of interest that I'm a Tanzanian at heart. And I studied at the Institute of Finance Management for 3 years, and I lived in Tanzania for more than 7 years. And then I moved to the UK. What was very strange, Joyce, is that when I moved to the UK, a rich country, a first world country, I missed Africa. And at that time, in the 80s, Tanzania was a poor country. But the love, the generosity, the Ubuntu, what we call Ubuntu, was there, very visible, very tangible. And I want to say that is our gift to the world today as Africa. Always remember that. And when we show up as Africans, we must not show up as if we've got nothing to offer the world. The world is in a crisis today. All these fancy things that the world tried to do landed us where we are now. Remember the elections of January 2025? This is where we are in a crisis now. And everybody is looking for solutions. And Africa can provide some of the solutions. So that's what I just want to put on the table. My good friend has covered everything I wanted to say in my presentation. So the coach in me is deciding that maybe let me take a different approach. And I want to beam my presentation, or is IT going to be able to assist? Or should I do it from my side? So I had a beautiful presentation, and unfortunately, my sister Joyce took everything that I wanted to say, and which is beautiful. It's great. Your comments, your input were brilliant. So I had to come up with a plan very quickly. The coaching me thought, maybe what I need to do is to start sharing some tools in how we do systemic coaching. So that's the first thing. Secondly, and how we bring in and highlight the importance of stakeholders. So that's the approach that I'm going to take. It will still get us to where we want to go, but I think it's a slightly different approach. So for starters, let me ask you, and what I would also want to do is to make this session very interactive. Why do I want to make it interactive? I want you as leaders in the room to realize that the teams that you work with, they are not coming into the organization, into the team empty-handed. They've got something to offer. So as a team leader, you're not the hero, you're not the Mr. Know-all or Mrs. Know-all. The people that you have around you have got something to offer. And therefore, one shift that we need to do as leaders is to learn to co-create solutions with the people that we work with. It's a shift because in the past, or even currently, there's a tendency for leaders to tell and to come up with all the solutions. In the 21st century, because the world is so complex, you will not have all the solutions as an individual. So that's the first thing that I want to say. So then I want to talk about an exercise and involve everybody. I think, Christine, if you can help me from time to time. I want us to start thinking about bringing in stakeholders into the room, in your meetings, even in your coaching session. So I saw in the tables there, the 3 tables, is it possible to reserve an empty seat for the voice of your critical stakeholder, right? Some organizations even have a seat in their board, if they have a board, an empty seat for the stakeholder, right? Because we've got a tendency to forget who our stakeholders are. And we just carry on and forget what we are there for. And then I want us to ask ourselves, what would our stakeholders want us to talk about in the 2-3 days we are together, right? Grab your pens, because at some point I'll stop and say, just make some notes and let's engage. So what would the children there, the children of Africa, the children of East Africa, the children of Tanzania, the children of Uganda, the children of Kenya, and African children broadly, what would they want us to be including in our agenda in the few days or in the 9 months that we are together? So that's the one question I want. We talk a lot about 2063 as Africa. We talk a lot about the Africa we want. What is it that we might regret not discussing today and in our future meetings when we get to that 2063? And I've seen some of you are quite young. You will get to 2063 as leaders. You will get an opportunity to look back and say, wow, I wish I had looked at this and this and this in 2063. I mean, now. So it's called Future Back. That exercise is called Future Back. It's an exercise that you can do regularly as you reflect on the work that you do. What is it that I might regret when I'm 80 years old, when I'm 90 years old, because we live very long. What is it what legacy do I want to build? And then who are other stakeholders whose voices matter now and in the future? Because sometimes we just think about stakeholders maybe as donors and maybe these children that we see now, but but who are other stakeholders that we might not be thinking about that are critical and whose voices we should bring into the room. So that's the first part that I want us to focus on. Maybe let me stay with that slide. Can I then ask you to either put in the chat, answer any of those questions on the chat if you can, or open your mic and give me some responses. If you need a few minutes to write, tell me that maybe we need a few minutes to reflect on the questions. Talk to your neighbor if you have to, but just give me answers. Maybe per table, I can see people are beginning to start. Chat about these questions. Maybe feel free, if you want to talk amongst yourselves in the tables, you can do that.
Okay. Responding to the question 2, what would they want us to talk about, focus on this week? I think they would want us to talk about life skills and values and how we can integrate it in their learning. Yeah.
So who are they? Maybe let's start before you hand over the mic. But who are these people that we are talking? Who are these stakeholders that we are talking about?
Well, from our table, we think these people, these individuals are the key, are the primary beneficial that we focus our work with. If it's girls, if it's women or parents in the education, then the parents or the girls, they will need to be there, represented. And then they will be keen to hear what are we discussing concerning their needs and wants, what are their challenges, how are we going to support them address their day-to-day challenges. So those key things are very important to them.
All the people who are involved in the children's life. So we have the teachers, we have the government, all those would be part of the stakeholders.
Okay, and you would be able to bring their voices into the room?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Next table.
Yeah, I have discussed here with my neighbor, and we have come with 2 levels of category of stakeholder. The first one is primary stakeholder, that we have identified students and teachers as our primary stakeholders in our interventions, as well as, and we have a second category, which is parents, guardians, traditional leaders, religious leaders, government as our secondary stakeholders. In terms of what will they expect us to present to them today in this meeting, for primary stakeholder, those who are students and teachers, they would like their voices to be heard on issues around conducive teaching and learning environment, review of education acts in Tanzania, to give the rights to girls for education, because there are some ethnic groups, they still practice the culture of like a girl can be used as a source of family income through a dowry, and girls, according to Tanzania Constitution of 1977, they have a right to education just like any other person. But also a very specific group, the learners and teachers with a disability. They would like also their voices to be presented in this forum today, and seeing their needs that they have, the special teaching and learning needs that they have to facilitate them acquiring the inclusive education just like anybody else does. But also They would like also to come up with a campaign of ending up of early marriage. That goes with the review of Education Act in our country, but also they would like the government to review the policies so that also they can be part of the policy issue that early marriage, if it's well mainstreamed in the Education Acts as well as in the policies, then the key stakeholders, the traditional leaders, religious leader, the parents, the guardians, they'll be put in a place of reinforcing of what has been already formulated at the policy and legal structure. That is part of what we had discussed, but I would like to give an opportunity to my colleagues who are also in this table.
Thank you for that. What we discussed with my neighbor here is our main stakeholders are the youth. What would they want us to talk about is, for example, the boys. I'm sure they'll ask, what about the boys when you're talking about gender? And maybe be more involved in forming the programs that we bring to them and the policies. Yeah.
Great, great. Next table, is there a next table, eh?
Yes, and with my neighbor, we have discussed the inclusion of one of our stakeholders being youth, the inclusion of the ideas to the board, so that their voices can be heard throughout the programming of the projects. But as well, the donors and the government, they are eager to see the sustainabilities of this program. So let's say in our vision on 2063, the impact that these projects have brought about in our community would be beneficial to both parts, the community as well as the donors and the government.
Okay. So can I ask a question now? And this is a safe space. There are coaches in the room. Most of us who are not part of you guys are coaches. So you must respond with honesty. When you do your work, do you always consider the needs of these stakeholders, the critical stakeholders? And if not, because we must be honest, sometimes we're caught up in the administration, the chasing of money and all that. If not, what is it that we need to do to start doing differently so that as we do every day, as we do our work, we put the needs of our critical stakeholders first? Any takers?
I think to just answer your question about what we can do differently to put the needs of our critical stakeholders first is we need to invite them into the spaces that we operate in. A lot of times we have sat in our cool rooms and then decided on their fate by designing programs and projects that sometimes don't meet their needs. But I think the most important thing that we can do going forward is to invite them in our spaces. Sometimes back as Fitch, we were involving one of our stakeholders at the district, and they were concerned, how do you people come up with these projects and you did not even involve us in the initial stage of developing the ideas? And I think that was a very big challenge for us. We promised them that going forward, we'll always invite them, because it's not enough to just include them in your activities, to just make sure they're monitoring, they're seeing that things are happening. But from the initial stages, I think it's very important that they should be involved. Because
okay, lovely. I love that. But what would happen if we were to switch the question around and you, leaving your air-conditioned room offices, and go to them and see their condition and see the environment they are in, what impact would that have?
Yeah, I think having an engagement with one of the key stakeholders, like in this particular case, the beneficiaries themselves, would provide us a platform to make a critical understanding of the actual problem on ground, so that by the time you are moving on to make either program or the project design, you are doing it from an informed point of view, after interacting with the beneficiaries themselves and understanding critically what they need, other than just sitting from somewhere and you think on their behalf and thinking you are thinking rightly. So moving down to them would now work best when it comes to the project design, and the design will now suit the interest of the beneficiaries or the stakeholders.
So I'm not going to go through all the tables, but I just wanted us to have a taste and just keep each other accountable going forward for the rest of the day and the next 2 days or so. And when you go back to your working environment, remember to bring in the stakeholder voice into your interactions. Is that something we can do? Is that something that is doable?
Yes, they said yes.
Yes. Let me just address why is it, okay. So the first lesson, and I'm mirroring this, and I'm hoping that this is something that you are going to take away when you go back. The responses, the brilliant responses you gave me, I could have presented them, but because I know that you work with these organizations and the stakeholders on the ground, I have involved you, asked you to come up with solutions, and you came up with very brilliant responses. So when you go back, make sure that you engage and you bring even your teams, the teams that you offer team. You're not the only one with answers. I'm not the only one with answers. You are I'm tapping on the 30 people in the room with experience. So take that as a lesson for yourselves as leaders, that you are not a hero leader. You don't have all the answers. Tap into the experience of the people that you work with. Actually, remember this. Your teammates, your colleagues are part of your internal stakeholders. Remember that. So you've got external stakeholders and you also have internal stakeholders. Why is it important to involve stakeholders, both internal and external? It's so that you can develop a product or rather services that are aligned to the needs of your stakeholders, in summary. So that's very, very important. But could there be some stakeholders that we didn't think about? Did we think about future generations as a stakeholder? Did we think about the planet as a stakeholder? So when you think about stakeholders, think about human and non-human stakeholders. Again, look back. When you are 80 years old, what is that thing that you will regret not having done now, today, this year, right? While you still have the energy. Because remember, when you are 80 and 90, you might not have the energy anymore. So remember that. And then why? And then we can now talk about partnership and why pay attention to partnerships in the 21st century. One of the what we have started seeing is that our stakeholders are quite informed, actually, right? With the emergence of democracy in many, many countries, stakeholders question things more. They demand better service more. They demand answers and accountability more. So just be aware of that your stakeholders are no longer just passive recipients. Or if they are at the moment, you are still lucky they are passive. In another few years' time, in Kenya, we saw it in other African countries as well, in South Africa as well. Stakeholders are beginning to ask questions, and they want people to be held accountable. But going back to why partnership is important, most organizations, I think including your organizations, have a real serious issue in terms of resources. Resources are scarce. And therefore, how do you partner? How do you tap into other organizations, partner with them so that they can help you in those areas that you don't have a competence in, right? In the form of a partnership. So that's very, very important. But what is also emerging is that partnerships must be based on mutual respect and trust. So most of your organizations work with young people. How are you going to ensure that you help develop the type or caliber of African leader who demand to be treated with respect when decisions are taken, who sees themselves equal even when they sit with developed countries? For too long, Africa has been seen as a junior partner. It is in how we change the mindset of the African, and those of you especially who work with the youth, you've got an opportunity to change the mindset of the African child. For the African child to think that I can do this, I am good enough, to be confident, especially women. When I coach women, there's a huge issue around confidence. In South Africa, even call it imposter syndrome. Maybe it's a term that you also know about. I'm not good enough. How do you, even those of you who work within the education space, help Africans realize that we are good enough, right? As Africans, we should not be having an imposter syndrome. So that's so important, because even as you coach very senior leaders, they will still say, hey, I think I belong there. I don't think I'm good enough, right? So I think that's one thing that I want us, as we partner, we must partner with the world as equal partners, right? So as NGOs, you've got a role to play in that. There's also a demand for more caring partners, right? Not partners who just take, but partners who take and are willing to give, are willing to contribute. Not partners, and I'm hoping we are not those partners who are just parasites. For us to earn the respect of the world, we must be able to say, this is what we can bring, this is what we can contribute, so that our dignity as Africans can be restored. So that's also very important. And then also it's important, and actually what happened in January with the American elections was an opportunity for us to reflect on the nature and impact of our partnerships. Some countries were even saying, in the first place, why did we rely on only one country for support? Why is it that us as Africans are not learning to do things amongst ourselves, trade, and it's happening now gradually, trade amongst ourselves? Why did we just rely on America? So therefore, sometimes when there is something that we see as a terror incident, it is also an opportunity for growth, an opportunity to come together as Africans and do things on our own and be more self-reliant, right? I think I've covered a bit of this, creating stakeholder value, why it is important. You know, I don't want to use South Africa, but maybe I should. We went, a good example, we've just gone through 30 years of independence. And after 30 years of independence, we reflected that we've built houses for people, free housing, free education, and a whole lot of things. But one of the things that came up when we reflected and we engaged communities is that you didn't ask us. If you had asked us what to prioritize, maybe we would have said to you, rather than building us houses, empower us with skills on how to build houses so that when these houses, when a window breaks, I don't go and in South Africa, we call it doing. I don't know what it's called in languages, but we go and knock on the government's door and say, that house that you built for me, the window now is broken because I don't have the skill. Maybe if you had asked us as your stakeholder, maybe we would have said, don't build us houses, build us schools, build us clinics, build us a bridge so that our children can cross and go to school, because when it rains, they can't go to school. So can you see the value? Sometimes you think, and we thought as government, we're doing a good job. But if you don't talk to your stakeholder, you will deliver services that don't respond to the needs of your stakeholders. Can we pause here? Have you had an experience where you thought you were doing a good job, but actually when you engaged your stakeholders, they felt that you could have given us something else, or what you were giving us is not what we really wanted? Any experiences? This is a safe space. I've shared my South African experience.
Yes, I want to share experience from Tanzania. We were advocating for re-entry policy, ensuring that out-of-school girls, especially teenage mothers, they are re-enrolled to formal school. But with so much advocacy, and now we're having re-entry policy operationalized in our education system, we're still not getting enough girls, especially teenage mothers, re-enrolling back to school. Now, with the consultations that we're making with them, one of the very profound issues or concern they're raising is that they will wish to go to alternative education pathways rather than to a formal school setting. And why is that? It's because still the teaching and learning environment, they are not gender friendly. They are still stigmatized just because they are teenage mothers. And also in our formal school setting, we don't have child care centers because they are now mothers. They have started to think about their children. And sometimes you can find that those teenage mothers that they don't have parents to take care of their child when they go to school. So at least the alternative pathways with the support for World Bank on the secondary quality improvement program. In these centers, they are provided with child care centers where they can leave their babies. So with so much of the consultation and advocacy, it's really now starting us to think on how are we going to enable our formal school setting to ensure that it's very gender friendly, but also having those child care centers where these teenage mothers, they can also re-enroll into the formal education system. Yeah, thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Reflection before you pass the mic. Please keep the mic. Take back the mic.
Yes.
So what is the lesson here? What things that we must do as teams is to pause, reflect, take the lessons learned into improve the way we do things. So I would like to hear whether with the reflection and the realization that you've gotten, what have you changed? What are you doing differently? And that comes from the feedback of your stakeholders.
Yes, so currently as Tanzania, we are leading the process of developing the National Re-Entry Implementation Plan. We are doing it in partnership with the Ministry of Education, Science and Technology. And one of the key areas that you're really emphasizing on that plan, or we have also documented, is the need of having guidance and counseling to these re-enrolled teenage mothers, but also to address the issue of stigma. Because these girls themselves, they present that once they're enrolled to formal school setting, you'll find teachers now continue to be perpetrators, thinking that, now you're a teenage mother, you know it all, so I can just come and approach you and have a relationship. So that is also one of the areas that you're really emphasizing, that the teachers should also know their roles, that they're not only teachers, but they're also parents to these children when they're at school. But also, due to the resources, it's still the struggle for the formal, with our consultations with the ministry, still a struggle for the formal education system to have childcare centers, because we are still struggling with even having or ensuring dormitories are in place for these girls and also boys. So it's still some sort of advocacy, but we believe and we're optimistic that we'll get there, ensuring that every Tanzanian child has access to quality and inclusive education. Yeah.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. Does what you have just shared with us, is your whole team on the same page as you? Can they articulate what you are articulating the same way that you are articulating it? Are you on page as a team?
Yes, we're on page, and my colleague also wants to chip in. That shows how we are basically on page about it.
Okay. No, your colleague doesn't have to chip in, but I'm just trying to show here that consulting with stakeholders right at the beginning, maybe if you had consulted with these young mothers earlier in the process, the lesson here is that, and I'm hoping you've taken it on board, the lesson is that, okay, going forward, when we co-creating is about creating together. Yeah? When we co-create solutions, we must talk to the stakeholders. That's very important. But also, as a leader, don't be the one who knows and you can articulate all. How do you ensure that the rest of the team is on the same page, such that when you are not available to go and meet with stakeholders, anyone within your team can go and represent you well, right? So that's very critical. So, and I'm saying this is part of the things that you can implement immediately, right? But it also talks to why it is important to consult with stakeholders and to take all lessons that you are learning, right? And then responding to stakeholder needs inform performance and our legacy. So your legacy, if what you deliver is informed by the needs of the stakeholders will co-own. They will say it is our program. They will not, it is their program. They will co-own. And they will even protect, if you, for instance, there's a building that you've got, or you've built something, or you've got office, they will protect those offices, because they will say it's ours. They will not say theirs, and we don't even know what they are doing. So that's the value of involving your stakeholders, and they become part of your solution. And then, so that's co-creation, collective effort so as to bring in diverse views rather than individual views. So when you hear all the voices, you hear diverse views. It's not just your way of doing things, it's also everybody's way. The people that are concerned, their way of doing things is also taken on board. And then I said earlier, stakeholders want organizations that are caring, but not just caring for people, for the planet. And yes, if there's an opportunity to make some money and profit, but the first thing, people, planet, it can come. Collaboration is also, I think Joyce spoke about that earlier. It's no longer a nice to have. And I would love that by the end of the 2 days that you are together, what collaboration opportunities have you got in the room? Colleagues from Tanzania, colleagues from Kenya, colleagues from Uganda. You know, if you put some ideas in one pot, you will come up with a very nice recipe that will come out of that. So that we don't operate in silos. Right? Because when we operate in silos, you just know what I do, what my organization does. It's interesting, it's very good and enriching to also know what somebody else within Africa does, and later even within the whole of Africa, what do other people do? I was a leader of an organization for some time. You would find that the head of HR will talk in a meeting, will talk about HR issues, the head of finance, just finance, the head of strategy, just strategy. And after they just keep quiet, or they play on their phone, or they play on their laptop. When we changed that, and we said, no, you're not going to operate in silos. Finance, you must know what HR does. HR, you must know what the strategy is about, so that we operate as a team. Is that something that you can implement within your team? Challenge your team. I even went to the extent of saying, next EXCO meeting, head of HR, you are going to present the financial report. Head of strategy, you are going to present on stakeholder management. Because these were senior leaders, it was important for them to have an overall picture. It was important for them, when one of us is not able to go and talk to stakeholders, they must be able to go, any one of us must be able to go and represent us as an organization. Another thing that I would want you to put it in your pocket and see and go back and challenge your teams. Ubuntu. So most of the time when we have got this complex as Africans, inferiority complex, we don't know that the world now is looking at alternative ways of leadership. The types of leadership and relationships that have been out there, that me, masculine, not caring, not empathetic, things that Africa has always done. Africa has always, Ubuntu has all, in different, I think we called it different things, but in Africa we always had that, and that's our gift to the world. And it says, I am because you are. So what would happen if that child that you are supporting, you look at them with empathy, right? You would look at them like your own child. You would look at them with Ubuntu, right? So let's not be shy to bring in African philosophies, because the world is looking for solutions right now. So yes, and then I think I've covered a bit of this. It does coaching leadership rather than hero leader. So stop being a hero leader. Leadership is about the collective, that's called leadership and not just leader. So the world is moving away from a one-man show to leadership. So how do you then bring your team as part of the leadership team? So leadership is about collaboration, partnership, starting internally and mirroring internal and external partnerships. So what does that mean? It means if you have no empathy for the people you work with, how do you expect them to have empathy for external stakeholders? You know, sometimes, and I'm sure most of you have experienced this, you walk into a shop or a place that offers services. The employees there, they start gossiping about the boss, and they even encourage you, no, go next door, yeah, this guy is this boss of ours is very bad, right? It's because the boss has not looked after the stakeholder. So rush out there and pay attention to external stakeholders while you have not paid attention to internal stakeholders. It's a parent who, or a school principal, or even a pastor for that matter, who on the pulpit is so good, but when you talk to the wife and the children, whoa, you will hear very terrible stories. I've spoken about breaking the silos, stakeholders. We have spoken about primary and secondary stakeholders. Don't forget future generations, guys. Future generations, because those are the people who will judge us, me included, right? Judge us. Why did these guys do this? You know, why did they take this decision? And then look at human and non-human stakeholders as well, right? The planet. Because if we have no planet, we won't be here. We won't be able to do all these fancy things that we want to do. Donors, yes, are important. Communities, East Africa. Then the 13th ferry. And there's a question there. Do we sometimes ignore the needs of key stakeholders, and what is the result? The 13th ferry is that stakeholder that you never think about. So an example of a 13th ferry that we didn't think about as organizations was COVID. COVID came, but what was good is that with COVID, we were then able to even, now I'm talking to you from South Africa, right? Because we became very creative. So that 13th, that stakeholder that you don't think about. The other stakeholder that we didn't think about is what happened in January. The American government in terms of supporting us. Do you guys have any other example of a 13th ferry and stakeholder that you should be thinking about, but you have not really thought about? Any takers? AI, could AI be a stakeholder that we didn't really think about? I don't know. I think Kenya can respond on that because I know that they are quite advanced in terms of technology. What is that stakeholder that we didn't think about? Or we don't have a stakeholder that we have not thought about. Climate change, the planet. We never thought about the planet doing and climate change doing the things that it's doing now. Yes.
Okay, I have some, I think we think about them, but we don't want, we are a little bit itsy about involving them, and I think it's the politicians. And I think those are people who, you know, they hold quite a stake. So I think we really have to roll up our sleeves and get into that space.
Okay, and how would we do that?
I think it's involving them right at the grassroots where we work and start from the lower levels and also identify the champions, because there are those people who, not everybody, the politicians, the mindset is that, you know, once you're a politician and all negative, but there are people really there who are pushing for the right things. So I think it's to identify them and then leverage on that.
Leverage on that. I like that. Leverage on that, because that was my next question. How would you use a relationship with politicians to benefit you? Any other takers? Is there a stakeholder that we have not thought about that we should be thinking about?
Yes, we should think about the earthquakes and floods. And when we do program intervention and think, when those things happen, what are we going to do in order to make sure that things are moving as the way they were planned, especially when we deal with students and teachers within the school setting environment.
Okay, so remember that. And climate change is an issue, really, nowadays. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. So I've said this, né? I've said managing these relationships is the responsibility of the whole team. Is that something that is doable in your teams? Let's be honest here. Or are you just this one-man show that doing everything? Or are you running, if you are a team leader or if you are a team, how is your team? How inclusive is your team? How knowledgeable is everybody, and how do they ensure that they bring? Now I'm going to talk about the beauty of the Enneagram. I know Joyce spoke about it as well. How do you ensure that each one of us, with their Enneagram type, with their strengths, with their ability to do things, for instance, your Enneagram 2, they are very humane, they are very people-centered. How do you tap on that? And even maybe when you need to send them to stakeholder, you send the person with the right frame of mind. So how are your teams configured? Are you leadership teams, or you still need to make some shift in terms of including everybody and engaging everybody in the team? Or you are an autocrat, you are a dictator. When your team see you, they say, "Oh, this one is a dictator." How lead, or teams led if you are not leaders? Or is there room for improvement in terms of how you lead? Any takers?
My takeaway here could be, when we're talking about managing the relationship within the team, I think we need to start discussing issues around shifting the power among the team members so that we can provide the opportunities for the growth in terms of relationship within the team. Because in most cases, you can provide the opportunity to a colleague, but then you have not provided the power to make decisions. So I think the good practice would be trying to shift that power 100% by giving the opportunity for members to make mistakes, and then they learn from that. I think that could be a very good way of managing the relationship within the team and growing that trait of leadership. Thank you.
Thank you. Great point. Good point. What you are talking about, difference between enablement and empowerment. So in your teams, are you enabled? Do they have the skills, the qualifications? Are they enabled, right? So if they are enabled, that's good. But are empowered? Do they have the authority? So those are things you need to look at. Enablement, if the enablement is high and the empowerment is high, your team will be running, your team will perform. But if you don't enable them, they don't have the capacity, it is about time to ensure check where are the gaps, what capacity is required, and you empower your team, you capacitate your team. Once you've capacitated them and enabled them, then you empower them. And empowerment includes what you exactly said, allowing for them to make mistakes. They will make mistakes. We all make mistakes. In the 21st century, nobody has got all the answers. So sometimes, after January, after the elections, we will be trying new things. How else can we do this? How else can we do this? So let's allow for mistakes, right? And then teams need to function at more than the individual. So that one is very important. Why is it important that we say, rather than you alone, why do we want the whole team to be part of running the team or the organization? It is because the world has become so complex. No one person can have us. So that's the answer, right? And we are learning as we go. as organizations. So that's the reason. But also, different voices hopefully will also bring in voices of external stakeholders into the products that you produce as a team. So that's very important. And then there's also the need for teams to take responsibility for individual and team performance on those areas where teams are jointly held accountable, which is what the team. What is a team? A team is a group of people who have joint accountability, joint responsibility for certain deliverables. Which is why there's a difference between team coaching, when we coach a team, and when we coach a group of people who are not held accountable for the same thing. So just make sure that your team is a team. Eh? Most of the time when we do team coaching, when we ask, are you a team? People say, actually, we are not a team. We are just individuals doing their own thing. So one of the first responsibilities of a leader is to make sure that your team is a team. So a team, they partners on a collective purpose based on the needs of the stakeholders. So as a team, you partner, but you have a collective purpose based on the needs of your stakeholders. There's collective leadership and shared vision. You know that shared vision, most of the time when we interact with teams, the leader has got one vision and the rest of the team are reading from a different script. So it is important that you have a shared vision so that you can jointly transform the environment. This is also important for succession, because if you are the only one who knows everything about the organization, what if you drop dead? So succession and also long-term sustainability of the organization, right? So a question now, before we move on, do your team is a team, or you're just a group of people doing their own thing? Or there's room for improvement? Let me put it nicer. Or there's a room for improvement in the way you run your team. Any takers? Because I can see you're not comfortable with the question. So the question was, are you a team? If not, is there a room for improvement?
Well, I think the room for improvement is always there, because we sometimes think that we are leading in a collective way, but we don't know who we are even. So learning is very key to ensure that we have that cohesive in the team that we are leading, and we are leading for the purpose of our existence. So the room for learning and improving is very key.
Okay, so that's where the coaches will come in. They will help you to reflect and also to reflect on the areas of improvement. Now, I'm very passionate about nature. And nature has been there for more than 30 billion years. And nature has survived. And if you look at nature, there are many beautiful lessons, leadership lessons we can learn from nature. I'm particularly fascinated by bees, right? I don't know, and maybe you guys are fascinated by different things in nature, but the lessons that I have learned from bees include the following. Bees are very good in terms of a long-term focus and sustainability of the hive, right? They will identify a queen, they will feed the queen royal, and she lays eggs, about 3,000 a day. They watch the queen, they look after the queen. When the queen is old and can no longer lay eggs, it's time for succession, identify another. they raise another queen. So that's the one thing. So they are good in terms of long-term sustainability of the hive. If it was an organization, it would have been long-term sustainability of the organization. And they are also very responsive when dealing with change. For instance, if there are just too many bees in one hive, they know when it's time to split the hive. They know when one queen now must move with a certain number of bees and go and start afresh, right? That talks to succession, that talks to sustainability. And then they have a generational thinking. And in a crisis, this is not going to be very nice. In a crisis, the worker bees who are really leaders, they take tough decisions, including starving the drones, starving the males, because the role of the males is just to mate with the queen. And after that, they don't really add a lot of value. Talking about bees, I'm not talking about, hey guys, I'm talking about bees here. So the worker bees, they then feed. When there's a crisis, there's no food. Because they worry about long-term sustainability, they will feed the young ones, the queen, but they will starve the drones, right? But also the other leadership is about reciprocity and generosity. It talks about how you deal with your stakeholders. Goes back to what I said earlier. The partnership with stakeholders should not be one-sided. There should be reciprocity and generosity. Remember, bees, if you use bees as an example, they will produce honey for themselves, but they also produce honey for external stakeholders, us. There's also collaboration and partnership with critical stakeholders. Bees play a very, very critical role in agriculture and food production. In fact, if there were no bees, we would struggle in terms of cross-pollination. And then they also produce other products that are good for us, venom, propolis, beeswax. We use them for different reasons. But what I also want to emphasize that in a partnership, in a relationship with stakeholders, it's important to have a mutual benefit, respect, mutual relationship. It would be interesting, but maybe it's not something that you have observed, but start observing nature going forward. Are there any other lessons that you have observed in nature, those of you who are passionate about nature? Or we have not really. And Africa is such a beautiful continent, guys. You must observe nature. Are there any other lessons from nature that we can take into leadership? Okay, let me bring in other lessons from nature that will be useful. It's about regenerative leadership. So in nature, there are rhythms. This is very important, eh? Rhythms, there's day, there's night. At night, we rest. During the day, we work. There are seasons. There's winter, summer, spring, autumn. In winter, at least in South Africa, because South African winters are cold, we retreat, we withdraw, we rest. So the message from me is that as you struggle with lack of resources, all these challenges, make sure that you don't treat teams like machines. They are people. They will need time to rest because beings. There is a lot of mental health issues right now because people die through more than they are supposed to work. So pay attention to that work-life balance. And then I spoke about stewardship, that as a leader, you are a steward. I spoke about the fact that you must not treat your employees like machines, and the cyclical nature of the work. As I've spoken about Ubuntu, Africa's gift to the world. What is Ubuntu about? It's about human dignity and respect. So if our relationships with stakeholders and partners were to have some human dignity and respect, some compassion and empathy, some interdependence and mutuality, sharing and generosity. Importance, when you spoke about the girls, the importance of dialogue and talking, dialogue in the African culture, especially, at least in days, was something that we did a lot. In South Africa, we used to call it likgotla. Even we into organizations where we would dialogue with stakeholders. So it's important to hear out the voice of your stakeholders. But Ubuntu caters for this already. And that's the gift we can bring to the world. And then my final thoughts before maybe we can engage a bit. The road ahead is not always clear, and it's difficult and it's complex. I know we are going through a very difficult phase right now, and we'll need to think outside the box. We'll need to find solutions that we've never thought about before. And I think consultations with stakeholders might be useful. They might give you ideas you never thought about. Let me give you a very interesting story. I moved house to where I am now, outside Pretoria, and my family was not keen to move with me because they loved the house where we were, the previous house. It is my helper, the lady who helped me in my house, who said to me, "Ma'am, the home is you. You move, they will follow." And that was life-changing for me. I thought it like that. She said, "No, you just move, they will follow." And it worked like that. So if I had thought that, no, a helper is a helper, there's nothing that can come out of a helper, I wouldn't have thought about that. So never underestimate the inputs of your stakeholders, even that stakeholder that you think is not as important, right? And then the need to reassess the way we have all with stakeholders. Africa is doing that now. I think there's more there's more talk about trade, inter-trade within Africa, rather than looking at America and the Western or North. So there's more now talk within the global South about how we can partner better. And then also, we must learn to see adversity as an opportunity and to start afresh, right? Also very important. We must continue to learn from our experiences with stakeholders, and we take lessons we learn from our stakeholders and include them to improve the way we do things. So the other one, this is now, I think this one, please listen very carefully. Things are not always black and white or right or wrong. So when there's conflict, that could be a third way, not my way, not your way, but our way, a win-win-win. So political parties learned this the hard way in South Africa. Last year we went for our elections. They were trying this one, vote for me, vote for me, vote for me, vote for me. The citizens of South Africa said, you come together and come up with a solution that will work for the country. The third way, not your way, EFF, not your way, DA, not your way, whatever political party. We want you to find a way, a third way that will work for all of us. So when you have issues with your teams, just step together and say, could there be a third way of looking at this rather than my or your way? Can we take what is good from my way and what is good from your way and come up with a third way? So that's how advanced some stakeholders are. They'll tell you, no, we heard you, but go and come with a third way. And our political parties struggled with that. So conflict or a crisis is not necessarily bad. It is how we respond to it that can result in either a gift or a breakdown of the partnership. COVID in some ways became a gift because today we are able to work from anywhere in the world, right? So, and then sometimes conflict can result in deepened maturity of leadership and improved stakeholder value. Exactly the example that I gave you about South Africa, where citizens, we said, no, you go back and find a third way. And that brought some maturity and compromises in terms of the leadership. That's Asante Sana. Thank you very much. Comments, questions from your side?
Yeah, thank you very much, Lind. I'm really excited about this. And the time you were speaking, a lot of thoughts were popping in my mind. And I've realized that I think there is one key stakeholders that we really need to discuss. And probably maybe you would bring your thoughts on the same, about decolonizing our mindset as individuals.
Yes.
Because as we start speaking to others, we need to start thinking correctly. And in most time, I feel that we have a lot of meetings inside ourselves, especially in the mindset. But if you are thinking differently, for me, I'm thinking that is a big stakeholder, like your mindset as a person. How do we decolonize? Because we have been colonized by different thinking, different philosophies, but how do we start from ourselves and then go outside? So maybe you could make some comment there. Thank you very much.
Great stuff. So I'm sure most of you know about the Sustainable Development Goals. The world realized that the Sustainable Development Goals are not really moving at the pace we expected. And now as some of us as coaches, we are working with the inner development goals, inner development. So that decolonization starts with me doing the work, doing reflection. Am I a stumbling block? Is there a different way I should be looking at things? So it's reflection, it's inner work, continuous inner work. We still do it. Everybody still do it, that does it. So it's continuous. You will only decolonize yourself if you continue to do that inner work. I spend a lot of time, maybe it's decolonizing the way women look at themselves. You know, women work so hard. But when you say you are ready for promotion, that no, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. And when women are 95% ready, they will tell you, no, I still need to prepare for the 5%. What I like about men, when they are 50% ready, they'll say, bring it on. I'm ready to lead, right? And then what happens is that man who is 50% ready to lead will use that woman who's 95, who was ready to lead, to do this paid work and do all the work. And then the woman becomes bitter. No, he's not doing any work. I'm doing all the work, but he takes the credit. But you didn't lift your hand up when they said who is ready to lead. So it's about decolonizing and deconstructing what is sitting within us. And it's not just you in the room, our leaders as well, both in the political space and in the organizational space. We just need to decolonize ourselves. Somebody in another session was talking about the fact that, I think even Joyce spoke about it, we must stop complaining. We must stop complaining and be part of the solution, right? Let's be part of the solution. Solutions are not going to come from outside. They are going to come from us. There's no savior coming for us, for Africa now. So we must be part of the solution, right? So, yeah, so I'm hoping so it starts with the inner work. It will start with the Enneagram, but work on yourself rigorously, and when you realize, don't run away. When you realize, was this me? Was I such a monster? So just keep coming back for more. I hope that's helping. More questions or comments? What is it? What out of this will you go and try and implement?
While you ask that question, Lindy, I wanted you to say something about you being a system. I think that is what you are addressing right now, because you come programmed with your systems to join other systems, and I know this is your expertise, so I'm crossing the line here just to ask you to say something, because that is part of it. This is not a clean, a clear plate with nothing. Can you say something?
Yeah. Yeah. Come again? Is the question for me? I thought somebody was responding.
No, the question was for you. Because
okay.
Yes, because what you have talked about now is that we are not coming to the plate completely like empty. It's not a neutral space. We are bringing in our own systems that are informed by other systems. You are the one who told me about systems. That's why I'm asking this question.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. No, I thought the question was everyone. Was for everyone. So, and I don't think I quite understand your question, but what I know is that what I stand for as an African is confidence, the willingness and the realization that if I don't empower others, we are doomed, as a continent. So that need to empower others to work in systemically, bring in stakeholders, life becomes much easier when you bring in views of your stakeholders. Maybe that's where systemic coaching comes in. Any other inputs? Yes. Any takers?
Thank you very much. This is so enriching. My question is about this, listening to the voices of these other stakeholders, the other chair that we are talking about, that we should always put, add. In most cases, you find that we already have some preconceived ideas as even leaders. And because I remember when we are going even out to the communities, we already believe that we have these ideas that these are the challenges that people are facing. And so I'm asking myself, how do we detach ourselves from what we already have in our minds, even about the problems that people have, so that we are able to listen to them? Because even look at our organizations, the way we operate, I don't know if we first go and listen to the voices of the people before we even come up with a program or even with an organization. Do we first listen to them, then we say, okay, maybe these are the challenges, then let's think about the program. But in most cases, I don't know, we first sit down as a group of individuals and we come up with this program so that this is what we believe are the challenges that people are facing. Let's go and help them. So I don't know if I'm making myself clear here. I don't know if my question is clear.
So, I hear you. The coach in me says, you are asking a question, but you've got the answers within you. So give me the answer. You've got it. You've got it. You know, coaching is about when I've thoughts and I just need somebody to, I need a thinking partner. So when I'm listening to you, you've got the answer. Give me the answer. What is the answer? Because when you come up with your own answer, you'll go and be able to implement it. It should not be my answer. Give us the, give yourself the answer and what you'll do differently. Peer coaching in the room, peer coaching, anybody to coach him? Did you hear his issue?
Yes. I don't know whether I should first pretend that I don't know the challenges that people have. Then I go and listen to what they have to tell me. I don't know whether that's the right way to do things. So I'm just
thinking, let's
how
pause.
Do I detach myself from my own preconceived, let's say, ideas about the problems that people have, so that I can truthfully listen to them and maybe also offer, because I can't also pretend that I don't know anything about what they are facing, the challenges that they are facing. But how do I really listen to them and detach myself from my own preconceived, maybe, ideas? I don't know. It's
okay, let me respond. But I think they are in the room who've got the answer. It's just that we are running out of time, but I'll respond. But in future, I would have allowed people in the room to give you the answer. And I think you also have the answer if you dig deep within yourself. But so firstly, please delete the pretending. Remember, we're talking about being authentic here. So you said I must pretend. No, remove the pretend. Delete that in your vocabulary. You must not pretend. So that's the first thing. So when you go to people, even if you know something, it would be good if they confirm and maybe add a little to what you already know. So that's the first thing. Secondly, they can even surprise you. You thought, according to your research, this is, and it happens a lot in organizations when we coach, we find that the leadership, they even have a strat plan, a 3-year plan based on this. But when we go and talk to the stakeholders, they will tell us, this is not what we want. This is what we want. If these guys had spoken to us. So there's always value in talking to stakeholders. If you're on, they will tell you, these guys are doing a good job. They will tell you. So you don't lose anything. If you have missed it completely, they will tell you. So it's also about humility. It's also about consultation and dialogue, right? But the humility to know that you don't have all the answers. Ego. I think coaching is going to help you with that. You don't have all the answers, right? So, yeah, does that help?
Or can I just make some small addition in respect to, in respect to his question?
Yes, thank you.
We have always made project or program design based on ESA and secondary data. And we always struggle a lot in ensuring that we develop or we work on our problem statement based on what we hear or the secondary data that we have. But in respect to his question, I think it is good to always validate, just like you say, to validate the secondary data that we already have about a particular community so that we get to hear from them to confirm whatever possible the research that has been made, so that whatever decision that we are making in terms of project design resonate exactly with what is happening, but not only relying on the ESA and the secondary data that we have. And that's something that we have been doing. We always hear about a particular community. We always reflect on the secondary data that maybe probably a survey or research that was done, and we move on to make a project design without moving to these people to confirm if really what we have had and the survey or the research that was done is exactly what is on ground. But I think going forward, just like you said, it's a matter of going down to confirm.
Okay, so the last thing I want to say is that why we have African people working with African communities, maybe the templates, that's the word I'm looking for, Western templates when you do the program design and the donor requirements. But why you are involved as Africans is so that you can ask the questions from stakeholders in a language that is palatable to them. You're not going to talk to them about technical, maybe engineering. How are you going to put it in a language that they do understand, so that what you include in the proposal is still their concern, but you've captured it in your own way? Because if you put it in technical language, they will understand it. Can I just give one last example, because I see we've run out of time. I coached a team leader in Ethiopia, and there was this community. They are like the Maasai. All of you in East Africa know the Maasai people. So that tribe is nomadic. So this organization was in the health space. So they were struggling, and donors wanted to build a clinic, this and that. But when the field workers consulted with these people, they figured out that no, these people will leave this clinic, rather train some of the people within the Maasai, within that tribe, it's not the Maasai, within that tribe, so that they midwives. So when they move with this midwife, train them on first aid. Can you see, they came up with a different solution, not what the original solution the donor wanted, because it wouldn't have worked. That clinic would have been a white elephant. That's the English. It would have been a white elephant. So when you co-create with communities and you talk to them in a language that they understand, they will give you their responses and they will add some value in your proposal. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I am so sorry because we can talk to her for a very long time just from what I know. I have one question here which you cannot answer, but I think she says you can answer this one. How do we sustain partnerships with stakeholders? A positive way of maintaining partnerships. So I wish I could give you time to talk about this, but I don't think we have the time. We are running late and we have a very full day. And, you know, on behalf of this team here, we have no words to thank you for bringing your heart to this space just the way I know it. But now they can share in the gift you are to Africa. So I just want to take this brief moment to thank you heartily for just being that and for speaking to us. I believe we heard you, and we did hear a separate message. And I hope now we can process that message and take it on to the next time, to the next place. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We appreciate and celebrate you and look forward to hearing you yet another time. I will ask you to clap for this wonderful Lindy.
Asante sana. Nashukuru.